Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling something that feels, well, deeply wrong, doesn't it? It's this really counterintuitive idea that the very tools we thought would bring us closer together, our big social networks that we're calling mainstream social networks or MNS, they're actually driving a global mental health crisis.
Yeah, that's really the tough conclusion we have to face. Based on a growing mountain of academic research, the data is becoming quite stark.
Stark how?
Well, we're seeing these undeniable trends, rising rates of anxiety, clinical depression diagnoses, even chronic loneliness, especially in demographics that are heavy users of these platforms. And the evidence isn't just correlational anymore, it's pointing fingers directly at the core design philosophy.
So it's not just about spending too much time staring at a screen.
No, it gets deeper. It's not the tech itself, fundamentally, but how it's been engineered. It's engineered to prioritize just one thing, really, above everything else. And that one thing isn't human connection.
Okay, so that's our mission for this deep dive then. We need to move beyond the simple screen time bad argument.
Right.
And really unpack this basic conflict. The conflict between algorithmic engagement, basically. The platforms need to capture every possible second of your attention.
And genuine human psychological well-being. That's the battleground.
Exactly. And we're going to use a couple of specific case studies to really highlight this. We'll compare the, frankly, quite damaging psychological outcomes seen in the MNS model with an emerging alternative, something healthier, microsocial networks, or MSNs.
And to really grasp the crisis, you have to understand this fundamental shift that happened. It's a paradigm shift. These massive platforms, they stopped being true social networks quite a while ago.
What did they become?
They essentially shed that original purpose, maybe connection, and they evolved into these incredibly sophisticated systems of attention brokerage.
Attention brokerage. Explain that.
Their whole financial model, their singular goal, is to capture your focus, distill it down, and then sell that focus to advertisers. It's a transaction.
And when our attention is the product being sold,
then our well-being, our mental health, it becomes what economists call an externality, a cost that's pushed onto someone else, in this case, us, the users. It's not factored into their profit equation.
Okay, so if the problem lies in this centralized design, this brokerage model, then the solution has to reject that, right? It has to be about decentralization.
That's where the thinking is heading. And this brings us straight to the model that our sources keep highlighting as, really pioneering this necessary shift. We're talking about platforms that deliberately reject that massive scale.
In favor of community health.
Exactly. And specifically, the decentralized paradigm being championed by places like Web4.community.
Why Web4.community specifically?
Well, it's cited repeatedly as a key model because its entire foundation is built on principles designed to counter the brokerage model. Things like genuine user control over their experience.
Like what I see in my feed.
Yes, and also verifiable data ownership.
Yeah.
Your data belongs to you, not the platform. And crucially, an absolute prioritization of quality interaction over just endless addictive scale.
So it's a fundamental design choice.
It's absolutely essential to frame it that way. We're not just arguing about features, like button colors or feed layouts. We're debating the core philosophy. Are you designing for the corporation's bottom line, or are you designing for the user's mental health? That choice dictates everything that follows, psychologically.
Okay, let's really dig into the roots of this problem then.
Yeah.
When we say mainstream social networks, MNS, what are we actually defining? Our sources point to three key things, right? They're all connected.
Yeah, three defining characteristics. First, just the sheer scale. Massive, often global.
Billions of users.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Second, absolute centralized control. One company dictates the rules, the algorithm, everything.
And third, the engine driving it all.
Yeah.
Those engagement maximizing algorithms.
Ruthless is a good word for them. We are, of course, talking about the giants, your Instagrams, your TikToks, X, Facebook.
These aren't just big platforms. They feel structurally built for addiction almost.
That's not far off. It's a perpetual growth and addiction model. And those algorithms, they're the engine that has to constantly maximize its fuel. And the fuel is your time, your eyeballs, and critically, your strong emotional responses.
Right. It's not just time spent, it's emotionally charged time spent.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And what's really fascinating and kind of disturbing is that the algorithm isn't aiming for a nice, pleasant, balanced experience for you.
Does it feel like it sometimes?
No, it operates explicitly on these dopamine-driven engagement loops. It learns very quickly exactly what cocktail of content will keep your eyes glued to that screen for the absolute longest duration possible.
Okay, but And anyone who's doom-scrolled late at night knows this. Positive, uplifting, maybe slightly mundane content doesn't really achieve that goal, does it?
It really doesn't, not efficiently anyway. So the algorithm rapidly figures out that the stuff that works best is content that's either highly sensationalized,
Like celebrity gossip or shocking news.
yes, or deeply polarizing things that make you angry, or pit groups against each other, or content that presents this visually impossible perfection. Think unrealistic body images, luxury lifestyles.
Why those specific categories? Why does it default to the stuff that often makes us feel bad?
The why is brutally simple. It's purely financial, and you really have to grasp this as the central mechanism of the whole crisis.
Okay.
Content that is polarizing or controversial or makes you feel envious or makes you feel outraged, that stuff maximizes the time you spend on the platform. It just does.
Because strong emotions capture attention more effectively.
Exactly. And the longer you're scrolling, the more ads they can show you. More screen time directly equals more revenue. It's a direct line.
So the algorithm is actually incentivized to make us feel stressed or upset.
It's incentivized to create chronic psychological distress. That's the unavoidable outcome. It's optimizing for high arousal, for polarization, for social comparison, which inadvertently, maybe, but inevitably, transforms the platform from a potential place of connection into what you could call a functional anxiety machine.
Wow. An anxiety machine.
It's actually a brilliant piece of engineering if you look at it purely technically, but ethically. It's destructive because it's specifically designed to exploit our natural human cognitive weaknesses and biases. Our negativity bias, our tendency towards comparison.
So it's finding the cracks in our psychological defenses and actively prying them open for profit.
That's a good way to put it. It exploits weaknesses rather than supporting our strength. And look, to really make this structural problem concrete, we need to see how it plays out in people's lives.
Right, the case studies.
Exactly. Our sources give us two really illustrative examples. They represent these completely divergent psychological paths you can take depending on the digital ecosystem you inhabit. We'll start with Sarah. She represents the human cost of living inside that mainstream social network structure.
Okay, let's step into Sarah's world. The profile says she's 24, a student. And her usage pattern is pretty typical, statistically speaking.
Depressingly typical, yes.
She's consuming well over 3 hours of content per day on these platforms. But let's look closer. What is she actually seeing during those 3 hours?
Her feed, according to the analysis, is this relentlessly, meticulously curated stream. It's all highlight reels.
What kind of highlights?
Think professional-looking travel photos from peers, announcements of amazing career successes, idealized aesthetics, bodies, homes, relationships that often rely on filters, careful staging, maybe even professional lighting.
So it's a constant parade of perfection.
It's a visual manifesto of perfection, yeah. And it's almost entirely disconnected from the messy reality of average, everyday life.
And the distress starts basically immediately upon opening the app.
Pretty much. When we look at Sarah's data, the first thing that jumps out isn't just the amount of time, but what that time is doing to her internal state, her perception of herself in the world. We can break down the harm into 4 core mechanisms of psychological distress that MNS users like Sarah consistently report and exhibit.
Okay, let's take them one by one. The first one feels like the most obvious, the one everyone talks about. Toxic social comparison.
Right. Academically, we often call this the upward comparison bias. It's a specific type of comparison. Sarah isn't just comparing herself to her immediate friends or neighbors anymore.
No, the scale is different.
Vastly different. She's comparing her authentic, often messy, definitely uncurated everyday life, her real lived experience against these manufactured, polished highlight reels. Not just from friends, but from thousands of peers, professional influencers, even carefully edited strangers she'll never meet.
So she's comparing her behind-the-scenes reality to everyone else's perfectly edited movie trailer.
That's a great analogy. She's fundamentally comparing her worst or even just normal moments to everyone else's best, most filtered, most staged, most performed moments. It's an inherently unfair comparison.
And what does that do to someone psychologically day after day, this constant, uneven comparison?
It triggers this deep, gnawing, continuous self-evaluation of failure. Because these highlight reels are often structurally, financially, or just aesthetically unattainable for most people, remember, they're performances designed for attention. Sarah constantly feels like she's falling short.
Leads to feeling inadequate.
Terribly inadequate. It culminates in a perpetually depressed mood, a measurable drop in self-esteem over time, and this really debilitating background hum of inadequacy. And because of the sheer scale of MNS, she literally has thousands, maybe tens of thousands of better, more successful, more beautiful people to compare herself against. It makes mental escape feel impossible unless she just completely logs off.
Okay, that's grim. Then there's the second mechanism, which sounds even more insidious because it's built into the platform's operation: algorithmic manipulation and fear-driven engagement.
Yes. This is where the algorithm isn't just showing her things she might like, it's deliberately choosing content designed not just to engage her, but often to upset her.
Why would it do that? Why upset her?
This goes back to the attention brokerage model. MNS algorithms aren't optimized for your happiness or your education or your mental stability. They are optimized purely for high arousal.
Meaning strong emotions.
Strong emotions, yeah. Because strong emotions, especially the negative ones like anger, fear, outrage, they are incredibly effective at holding attention. They equal persistent engagement. So the algorithms explicitly exploit our known cognitive biases, our negativity bias, for example, our tendency to pay more attention to bad news.
Our tribalism, maybe?
Definitely our tribalism. It prioritizes outrage-inducing content, controversial topics, things that create conflict or tap into fear. The goal isn't to inform or connect. The goal is simply maximize screen time. Full stop.
But hang on. Couldn't someone argue the algorithm is just reflecting what users click on? If Sarah engages with one political argument, hasn't she kind of voted to see more? Is it really fair to call it manipulation?
That's a really crucial point, and it's the platform's standard defense, isn't it? But the source material pushes back on that. It argues it is manipulative because it's exploiting a known vulnerability, not respecting a conscious choice.
How so?
The platform knows, based on billions of data points, that conflict, fear, and outrage are neurologically stickier, more engaging than, say, a positive story about community volunteering. It's easier to provoke a reaction with negative content.
So it traps the user.
It absolutely traps the user in a feedback loop. Clicking on one emotionally charged post tells the AI, okay, this works, and then it immediately floods her feed with a torrent of similar, high arousal, often negative content. This isn't user choice. It's algorithmic amplification of negativity.
And the psychological fallout of being stuck in that loop.
It generates measurable, generalized anxiety, increased irritability, and really importantly, it contributes to this heightened feeling of social division and helplessness because the platform consistently makes the world look intensely polarized, chaotic, and dangerous, even if her immediate reality isn't like that.
Wow. So it shapes her perception of reality.
Profoundly. It's engineered to keep her psychologically activated, sort of perpetually wound up, specifically to hold her focus for advertisers.
That explains a lot, actually.
Yeah.
Okay, third mechanism. The burden of quantitative validation pressure.
Mm-hmm.
This is where sharing stops being about, well, sharing.
Right. It stops being about communication and starts being about performance and seeking approval through numbers.
Likes, shares, followers.
Exactly. In the MNS world, success and tragically, even your personal identity gets boiled down to these highly visible external metrics. Likes, shares, follower counts, comment volume. This structure basically compels Sarah to constantly chase external validation. Psychologists call it extrinsic motivation, doing something for the reward, not the inherent value.
So sharing something personal isn't just sharing anymore.
No, it turns into this high-stakes gamble for public approval, posting a photo, sharing an opinion, even announcing good news. It becomes a performance.
And if the performance flocks,
yeah.
If it doesn't get enough likes.
If it doesn't meet some arbitrary metric threshold, maybe 100 likes in the first hour or whatever her peer group norm is, the whole experience feels like a public, measurable failure. It's incredibly stressful.
So she's driven by fear.
Constantly driven by the fear of not going viral, or maybe even worse, the fear of just being silently ignored, getting zero engagement. Her self-worth effectively becomes this fragile currency that's constantly being evaluated and potentially devalued by thousands of anonymous data points controlled by a central algorithm. It leads to this profound erosion of her intrinsic sense of value, her feeling of worth, regardless of external metrics.
That sounds exhausting.
Yeah.
And finally, there's a physical element too. Cognitive overload and sleep disruption. This isn't just mental fatigue. It's actually messing with her body's basic functions.
Yeah. This is crucial. The sheer volume and, importantly, the speed of information that these MNS platforms push at us, it just overwhelms our natural attentional capacity. We are simply not neurologically designed to process that much data, especially emotionally charged data, that rapidly for hours on end.
It feels like drinking from a fire hose.
Exactly. And beyond just the mental drain, the behavior patterns these platforms encourage are physically destructive. That endless scrolling, often late into the night.
The blue light.
The intense blue light exposure. Yes, it creates this neurological overstimulation. Can you walk us through how that actually works? How does scrolling and blue light mess with sleep?
Sure. That constant stream of high arousal content, we talked about the outrage, the envy, the fear, it keeps your sympathetic nervous system, your body's fight or flight response activated. It's telling your body there's a constant low-level threat right up until the moment you try to close your eyes.
So you're trying to sleep, but your body's still on high alert.
Exactly. And simultaneously, that bright blue spectrum light emitted by screens is directly suppressing the production of melatonin. Melatonin is the hormone that signals to your brain that it's nighttime and time to wind down. The blue light essentially tricks your brain into thinking it's still daytime.
Double whammy. Body's stressed, brain thinks it's noon.
Precisely. And this chronic chemically induced sleep deprivation, it's like pouring gasoline on the fire for every single anxiety symptom she's already experiencing from the comparison and the algorithmic stress. Sleep loss makes everything worse.
So when we pull back and look at Sarah's overall outcome, the picture is, well, it's pretty undeniable, isn't it?
Yeah. M&S platforms seem to force this passive, competitive, anxiety-ridden consumption pattern. Her self-worth becomes this fragile thing, completely dependent on external validation from the platform. It's basically setting her up for long-term psychological distress.
It's a system perfectly designed to produce that outcome, unfortunately.
Okay, that profile of Sarah is genuinely terrifying, mainly because it feels so incredibly common. So many people are living that experience.
It is disturbingly common.
Which raises this huge public health question, doesn't it? If that MNS environment is, as you say, structurally designed for harm, maximizing profit by monetizing attention, even at the cost of user well-being, then what does the opposite look like? What does a platform actually designed for health look like?
That's the crucial next step. We have to look at the therapeutic alternative, which our sources identify as the microsocial network, or MSN. And we can define MSN superiority precisely by contrasting its core principles with everything we just discussed about MNS.
So what are those core principles?
The absolute non-negotiable design principles for a healthy platform, according to this research, have to prioritize things like intentionality. Why are people gathering?
A specific purpose.
Yes. Shared niche interests, what brings them together constructively. And crucially, community governance giving users real control rather than the top-down MNS approach. It has to reject the MNS ethos of just endless, uncontrolled, addictive growth at all costs.
So it's not just about being smaller in size, although that's part of it. It's about having a fundamentally different goal and structure.
Absolutely. Size matters, but the intent behind the design is paramount. The goal shifts from maximizing engagement metrics to creating a sort of digital sanctuary.
A sanctuary?
Yeah, a focused, high-trust environment that's deliberately protected from that constant MNS anxiety machine we described with Sarah. And this model, this alternative, it's really being pioneered effectively in the decentralized web space.
Which brings us back to Web4.community.
Exactly. Web4.community serves as a perfect example in the sources because its very architecture is designed to directly counter those four stressors Sarah experienced. It's built differently from the ground up.
Okay, help us understand the mechanics here. How does a decentralized structure like the one Web4.community uses actually deliver that user control and intentionality? How is it different in practice, not just in theory?
Well, it tackles the root problem: centralization. In a model like Web4.community, user control isn't just a setting you toggle. It's built into the architecture itself, often through concepts like decentralized identity and genuine data ownership.
Meaning, my profile data, my connections, they belong to me, not the platform.
That's the core idea. Instead of the platform owning your social graph, owning your content, and selling access to your data, you retain ownership and control. This is often managed through cryptographic methods, ensuring verifiable ownership.
And governance, how decisions are made.
That's also radically different. Governance in these decentralized systems is often token-based, where users who hold the community's token get a say, or it's driven by other forms of direct community voting and proposals. Rules, moderation policies, even feature development can be influenced or decided by the actual users.
Instead of by a corporate board thousands of miles away whose main goal is quarterly profits.
Precisely. It fundamentally shifts the entire incentive structure. You move the rewards away from maximizing addiction and scale and towards generating genuine value, fostering high-quality, focused interaction, and maintaining the health of that specific community.
So forcing smaller scale, giving users real ownership, it almost automatically filters for intentionality, doesn't it? You wouldn't join a small, focused Web4 community group about, say, rare stamp collecting unless you were actually interested in rare stamp collecting.
Exactly right. You join for a specific reason, a shared passion or goal, rather than just mindlessly opening the global feed app because you're bored and looking to kill time.
That intentionality, it feels like the psychological key, the prerequisite for building a healthy digital space.
It really is. It changes the entire dynamic of interaction.
Okay, so we've laid the structural groundwork for this healthier alternative. Now let's see how this actually plays out for an individual. Let's move to our second case study, Tom, who represents the MSN user experience.
Yes, Tom's profile provides a really compelling direct contrast to the chronic anxiety we saw in Sarah's case. It shows what's possible with intentional design.
All right, let's meet Tom. He's 27, works as a software developer, and unlike Sarah's passive consumption, Tom has made a very deliberate choice about where he spends his digital social time.
A conscious choice, yeah.
He's not on the massive MNS platforms for hours. Instead, he uses a microsocial network. The sources suggest it could be like a specialized community built using the Web4 community model, and it's dedicated exclusively to one specific interest: analog photography.
Notice the specificity right away.
Absolutely. And crucially, this platform emphasizes small, high-quality, actively moderated groups. The typical group size mentioned is around 500 active members, not millions. That small scale feels critical.
It is. And look at the immediate difference in both scope and intent compared to Sarah's experience. We're talking depth over breadth here. And just like with Sarah, we can analyze Tom's experience through 4 core mechanisms, but this time, they're mechanisms that provide significant psychological protection and actually enhance his mental well-being.
Okay, the first one seems directly linked to that specificity: niche focus and identity reinforcement.
Absolutely. This is huge. Tom interacts exclusively within a clearly defined group of people who all share a deep, constructive, and genuine interest, the craft of analog photography.
So the conversations are different.
Completely different. The interaction is focused entirely on things like skill sharing, troubleshooting darkroom problems, giving constructive critique on composition, maybe mutual appreciation for a particular film stock or camera. He's not comparing his lifestyle or his appearance to impossible ideals.
He's comparing his f-stop setting.
Exactly. He's comparing his darkroom techniques or his aperture settings to someone else's within a context of shared learning and passion.
That focus on a tangible skill, something constructive, rather than just chasing likes, that must have a dramatically different effect on his internal motivation, right?
It really does. It directly fosters this powerful sense of competence and mastery over a specific domain. He's learning, he's improving, he's helping others. This significantly strengthens his intrinsic motivation, that drive to do something for the pure joy and satisfaction of the activity itself, not for external rewards like likes or shares.
Which builds confidence.
Radically boosts his overall self-efficacy, yeah. Which is that core psychological belief in his own ability to succeed and accomplish tasks. So for Tom, this digital space is actively affirming his identity and his skills. It functions like a supportive workshop or a studio space, not like that terrifying, self-worth challenging performance stage Sarah was trapped on.
Okay, that makes sense. And the small, self-selected nature of the group must also change the quality of the connections he's making. Which brings us to the second protective mechanism: genuine, high-quality social capital.
Yes, and this is a really critical distinction that social scientists make. Because Tom's group is small, because it's self-selected around a shared passion, and because it's actively moderated, meaning everyone there genuinely cares about analog photography and behaves respectfully, the interactions become inherently low stakes.
Less pressure.
Way less pressure. They tend to be more personal, more relevant, and significantly more empathetic than the interactions on a massive anonymous platform. And this cultivates what sociologists call bonding social capital.
Bonding capital.
As opposed to
bridging social capital, which is what the huge MNS platforms are arguably better at generating.
Okay, can you clarify that difference? Bonding versus bridging, maybe with an analogy.
Sure. Think of it like this. Bridging capital is like having a huge LinkedIn network.
Yeah.
Hundreds, maybe thousands of weak ties. It's useful for getting broad information, maybe finding a job lead, connecting different clusters of people. It bridges different groups.
Okay. Bonding capital, which these focused MSNs cultivate so well, is different. It's about strong, deep, trusting ties with a smaller group of people. It's having those 3 or 4 friends. You can call it 3 a.m. if your car breaks down or if you're having a really tough time mentally. It's about depth and trust.
Got it. Bridging is wide, bonding is deep.
Exactly. And that robust sense of belonging, that deep bonding capital Tom develops within his photography group, is identified as a critical foundational buffer against chronic loneliness and generalized anxiety. When Tom posts a question about a developing technique or shares a photo he's proud of but maybe slightly unsure about,
He gets real feedback.
he gets genuine, relevant, often constructive feedback from people who understand the context, share his passion, and are actually invested in a small way in his success and learning within that specific need. It's supportive.
That feels worlds away from Sarah's experience. Okay, next protective factor. And this feels like the technical game changer. User control and algorithmic freedom. This is where those decentralized models like Web4.community really flex their muscles, right? By ditching the manipulation engine.
Precisely. This is fundamental. Platforms built on models like Web4.community often reject those engagement-driven algorithms entirely. It's a philosophical stance. The user, not the algorithm, should be in control of their information flow.
So Tom's feed looks different.
Completely different. Typically, his feed would be chronological posts appear in the order they were made. Or it might be organized by specific topics or filters he chooses. He sees what he explicitly asked to see, or what the community he chose is discussing naturally.
Not what some AI calculated would make him angry or keep him scrolling the longest.
Exactly. He's not constantly being fed algorithmic suggestions designed to provoke a reaction or maximize his time on site.
So he's not chasing the next dopamine hit engineered by the platform. He's intentionally deciding when and how to engage with his community. It puts him back in the driver's seat.
It restores complete agency over his consumption. That's the key word, agency. Tom can step away from this MSN for 3 days, maybe focus on a project, and come back without that gnawing fear that he missed some crucial manufactured outrage cycle.
Or that his own posts have suddenly become invisible because the algorithm decided they weren't engaging enough.
Right. That pressure is gone. This freedom removes that destructive need for constant presence and validation that plagued Sarah. It allows for mindful, intentional engagement. He can use the platform as a tool, maybe check in for 15, 20 minutes, share something, learn something, and then consciously put it down and return to his offline life.
It successfully breaks that neurological addiction loop.
It does, because his time isn't just spent passively consuming addictive content. It's spent actively doing something constructive related to his passion, interacting with purpose.
Okay, and the final protective layer. Built-in safe spaces, often enabled by that decentralized or community-led governance structure.
Yes. MSNs, partly because they are small and niche-focused, tend to have much more effective moderation. You often have dedicated, genuinely engaged moderators who are part of the community, plus community-defined and enforced rules for positive interaction.
And in the Web4 model specifically.
In models like Web4.community, users often hold that verifiable influence over governance, maybe through tokens or other mechanisms, and they have control over their data. This gives them a real, tangible stake in maintaining the psychological safety and integrity of their shared space. They're invested in it, not just emotionally, but structurally.
Which means if someone starts acting toxic or posting harmful content or harassing others, the community itself has the tools and the motivation to deal with it quickly.
Much more quickly and effectively than on a massive platform where moderation is often outsourced, automated, and struggles with scale and context. It provides an inherent, localized defense against the kind of digital toxicity, harassment, and hate speech that MNS platforms often seem to tolerate or even amplify because, again, sometimes outrage drives engagement metrics.
So that local control fosters trust.
Exactly. It fosters trust and creates a psychologically secure environment where Tom feels safe enough to be a bit vulnerable, to ask beginner questions, to share work in progress, to communicate openly about his craft and its challenges without fear of ridicule or algorithmic punishment. That low-stakes, high-trust environment actively protects his psychological baseline.
The contrast between Sarah and Tom is it's stark, it's extraordinary. Tom's outcome in the MSN is basically the complete opposite of Sarah's MNS experience.
It really is.
The focused, controlled, supportive environment isn't just not harming him. It seems to be actively serving him. It's a place for relevant exchange, for identity exploration around his passion, for building real skills and connections. It's a protective digital space that actively enhances his mental well-being because it's prioritizing meaning and mastery over mindless addiction and empty metrics.
And crucially, this divergence isn't some random accident. It's not about Tom just being better at managing social media than Sarah. It's a direct, predictable consequence of the underlying design philosophy of the platforms they chose. Sarah experiences chronic, structurally induced stress in the MNS ecosystem optimized for attention brokerage. Tom enjoys enhanced well-being and growth in the MSN model optimized for community health and user control, like those built on Web4.community principles. This comparison really provides the most compelling argument for why we need a fundamental shift towards these decentralized, intentionally smaller, purpose-driven platforms. It's becoming a public health necessity.
Okay, so wrapping this all up, it feels incredibly clear that the entire public health issue we started with really stems from this fundamental design conflict. As you pointed out right at the beginning, MNS platforms are inherently designed for one primary purpose: the monetization of attention.
That's their business model.
And the resulting psychological harms, that toxic comparison, the engineered addiction loops, the constant exposure to manufactured conflict and outrage. These aren't just unfortunate side effects, are they?
No, the research strongly suggests they are predictable, even necessary features of a system whose primary goal is maximizing time on site, maximizing ad revenue. The harm is in many ways baked into the design.
It's a feature, not a bug, unfortunately.
That's the critical, maybe uncomfortable takeaway. The harm is predictable, and because of the scale of MNS, it's mathematically scalable across populations. Now, in sharp contrast, MSNs, particularly those that adopt that user-centric, decentralized structure we see in models like Web4.community, they're optimized for a completely different metric.
Not profit maximization.
No. You could argue they're optimized for something we should all be paying more attention to: return on mental health investment, or maybe mental health ROI.
Mental health ROI.
Yeah. These platforms succeed when their users feel healthier, more genuinely connected, more competent, more supported, not when they're simply maximally addicted or agitated. The incentives are aligned with well-being, not against it.
And our sources seem to boil down the factors that create this positive ROI, this MSN superiority, into three core interconnected elements, things that maybe users or developers looking to build or join healthier communities should really prioritize. The first factor seems non-negotiable: scale.
Yes, small size acts almost like a natural firewall. It inherently limits the potential for toxic virality things spreading uncontrollably without context. It limits the effectiveness of large-scale abuse or manipulation campaigns.
Because accountability is higher.
Much higher. When you know you're interacting within a group of, say, 500 people, often focused on a specific niche, there's less anonymity, more personal reputation at stake. It naturally maintains a focus on depth and quality interaction, simply because there's no real reward, no massive audience for cheap sensationalism or outrage bait.
Okay, scale is number one. The second defining factor is intentionality.
This goes back to the why. Why are people gathering in this space? Users join MSNs for a specific, usually constructive purpose, maybe to discuss analog photography like Tom, or to learn a new coding language, or to share highly specialized research, or to support each other through a specific life challenge.
They're not just there to doom scroll or kill time.
Exactly. They aren't joining merely to pass the time or seek generic passive entertainment. And that shared intentionality fundamentally breeds more constructive discussion, more mutual assistance, more focus on learning and self-improvement, all activities that are intrinsically rewarding and psychologically beneficial.
Makes sense. And finally, perhaps the most crucial element for individual psychological safety and freedom: control.
This is the big one. It's freedom from those manipulative, engagement-maximizing algorithms that define the MNS experience. User control restores agency.
Puts you back in charge of your own feed, your own attention.
Precisely. It transforms the digital experience back into a tool that the user consciously utilizes for a purpose they define, rather than being part of a system that is constantly utilizing the user, exploiting their cognitive vulnerabilities simply to maximize ad revenue. This is the fundamental advantage that decentralized models, the ones exemplified by platforms like Web4.community, really provide: user sovereignty over their digital space.
So pulling it all together, the main conclusion from this deep dive seems pretty clear-cut. If we care about mental health in the digital age, the future of responsible, psychologically sound social networking really requires us to actively foster and choose these smaller, safer, purpose-driven digital havens.
It does.
The decentralized model, the MSN approach, particularly as seen in platforms building on principles like those of Web4.community, it isn't just some niche tech trend. The sources position it as a necessary public health intervention. a way to consciously combat this epidemic of digital stress, anxiety, and loneliness that the MNS model has inadvertently fueled.
It's about demanding systemic change, really. We need to move the conversation from simply asking, how can we better tolerate the toxicity of these massive platforms, towards asking, how can we actively design, build, and support systems that intrinsically promote mental resilience, genuine connection, and high-quality interaction from the start?
A fundamental shift in priorities.
Yeah.
Well, that wraps up our deep dive today on the psychological superiority of microsocial networks. We've really dissected the mechanisms of distress inherent in the MNS model, that toxic comparison, the engineered addiction, the crushing performance pressure Sarah felt, and we've contrasted that with the powerful mechanisms of protection found in the MSN model, the Natch focus, the restored user agency, and that crucial, genuine bonding social capital that Tom was able to build in his focused, decentralized community.
Yeah, the contrast is the key. And maybe I can leave you, our listeners, with one final thought to chew on, building on this profound design conflict we've explored. We've seen pretty compelling evidence that platform design directly impacts public health outcomes on a massive scale, contributing significantly to global anxiety and depression.
A heavy responsibility.
It is. So if that's true, what responsibility does this place not only on the developers and entrepreneurs who choose how to build these digital spaces, and again, the sources clearly point to models like Web4.community as leading the charge in responsible user-centric design, but also what responsibility does it place on us, the users?
Our choices matter.
Deeply. Perhaps the choice to consciously disengage from the large, inherently addictive attention brokerage machines and instead seek out or even help build these intentional, purpose-driven micro-communities. Maybe that choice is one of the most powerful acts of digital self-care and indeed digital independence that you can undertake right now. What does intentionality look like in your digital life?
A really vital question to reflect on. Thank you for joining us for the deep dive.